see our society disrupted, our world disrupted. So we turn to you, Lord, and we seek your help, your guidance, your understanding, and Lord, for the days that we live in. We pray, Father, for our leaders on the national level, for our president and the Congress, for the governor and the legislator, and Lord, certainly for this, our city council, Lord, as they lead us here in this area and in our city. We pray, God, for them to know, Lord, what to do in times, Lord, that are uncertain, that they would all treat one another with respect and civility, Lord, in the way we respond to one another. We're thankful, God, for their leadership and their willingness, Lord, to lead. We do pray, God, for those who are on the front line. And we think, Lord, of the doctors and the nurses locally, Lord, that are dealing with the issue of COVID-19. For those, Lord, EMTs, police officers, firefighters, they don't know, Lord, who they're walking up to. And Lord, we would just pray, God, for your protection and guidance upon them as well. And we're thankful for them. We would pray, God, for your protection on our whole community. And Lord, that you would keep the residents of our city in health. And Lord, that they can continue very soon, Lord, in their lifestyles that they have. Thank you, God, for the scientists and the researchers who are studying to try to combat this disease, Lord. And Lord, we would ask for you to show them the way and to give them guidance in this matter as well. And Lord, as this meeting moves forward tonight, we would ask, God, that you would once again lead, guide, and direct, that you would give wisdom that is from above. And may we often stop, Lord, in life, and as this psalm ends, be still and know that you are God. So we thank you, Lord, for this great privilege of serving you. And we ask these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
The flag
of the United
of
States
the United States
and to the
the
republic
republic on which it stands,
one
one
nation
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty
with
and
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we will move on to the approval of agenda, starting with candidates for public office, followed by public comment on agenda items, then the consent agenda. Item 13A, we have the electrical vehicle charging station Eagle grant. Item 13B, we have the Michigan hard gap exemption. Item 13C, we have the trash, brush, and leaf collection millage ballot language resolution. 13D, we have the large scale street improvement program. 13E, we have a schedule of a public hearing for the fiscal year 2021 budget, followed by public comment on non-agenda items, council and manager communications, and closed session. I would like to make the change on the agenda that we will no longer need to go into closed session this evening. So any other questions, comments, additions, or deletions to the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda
As amended?
as amended, of course.
Thank you.
Support.
We have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member McNeil,
Yes.
Member Metzger,
Yes.
Member Traver,
Yes.
Member Underhill,
Yes.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Now I'd like to invite any candidates for public office who'd like to speak. All right, seeing and hearing none, we will move on to public comment on agenda items. Anyone wishing to address the council on something on the agenda may do so for a maximum of 5 minutes, just stating their name and address for the record.
This is a reminder for anyone and the attendees, if you are interested, to raise your hand And I mean that through the Zoom app at the bottom of your participants view, you'll see raise hand. If you raise your hand, I will unmute you and turn your video on to let you ask your question.
All right, that being said, any public comment on agenda items? All right, hearing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. Item 8A, we have the scheduled public hearing for zoning amended application RZ 20.01 for 119 North Grand Street. We have the city council minutes from the regular session on Monday, April 20th, 2020, and the city bills totaling $221,159.98. Any questions, comments on the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Metzger, second by Underhill. Any other comments on the consent agenda? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member McNeil,
Yes.
Member Metzger,
Yes.
Member Traver,
Yes.
Member Underhill,
Yes.
Member Wolfersberger,
Sorry, yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes,
Member Gates.
Yes.
Motion carried.
thank you. That moves us down to item 13A under reports and recommendations, the electric vehicle charging station Eagle Grant.
I'm gonna let Ed handle this.
Do I have a video or just an audio? I gotta see myself.
I don't see you.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll just do it this way then. Start, right.
But Ed, I wanted to see you.
There
How
you are.
about that? Is that better? Okay, well, this is quite a opportunity, I think, for the city, because back on February 1st and 2nd of 2019, the mayor, city council members, and city manager and the city director met to discuss and identify a vision and direction for the city of Marshall. And as part of this vision, it was developed. The goal for providing electric vehicle charging stations was established and subtasks developed, which were presented to the city council on August 19th of 2019. Now, I got to give a lot of credit to Cheryl, a retiree, Cheryl Vosberg, because she was really persistent. We early on identified this Volkswagen settlement grant that was available to the state of Michigan, and it was said it was going to be available to submit a grant in October, and Cheryl was called regularly, and finally, due to her, I think, perseverance, we really was able to file for the grant in December. And even after that, she kept following up to make sure that we were still in the queue for an award. So she did file in 2019, in December, a grant application was submitted to the Eagle, the Energy, Great Lakes and Energy Department of the state of Michigan for 2 level 2 EV charging stations downtown, one in the Grand Street parking lot and the other on the east end of the south side of the Green Street parking lot. That's, I guess I refer to it as the Farmers Market parking lot. And then just recently on April 24th, 2020, we got an award, or a notice of award of the grant. We applied for a little over $100,000 and the state granted towards that project, both those charging locations of $98,140, which left a city matching amount of $2,000. And right along, we've been working with Westside Solutions. It's a group that's in partnership with ChargePoint, one of the premier developers for charging stations in really the Midwest, this country. And they've been providing a lot of technical assistance and design and helped us with the grant, and done just an outstanding job for us. So again, with this being a goal for the city council and electric charging vehicles as a major goal, that staff would recommend that the city council approve entering into the grant agreement between the city and Eagle and it's the Materials Management Division for Eagle for grant funding.
Could I ask a question, Ed?
Certainly.
Just refresh my memory on where those are going, and I know we have to pay that cost up front, right, Bully? Are we sure we're gonna get reimbursed?
Well, that was a question I keep asking. I guess it's good as the state, because you're right. We have to pay West Side Solutions
Right.
as you go along and install these. And of course, we've got a little bit of electric line work to do to hook them up, not a whole lot. And yeah, so, and then we have to seek reimbursement from the state, much like we would do for a bridge project. We seek, we end up spending money, then we get reimbursement for it from the state. They will not fund anything for us by just giving us the money, then hoping that we will carry out the project.
Okay.
Gotta provide them documentation and proof.
Okay.
But I have a question as well. I have a concerned constituent that when she heard this was going into the farmer's market lot, she's curious about if this will be disruptive to market operations at all.
Well, Tom and I talked a little bit about this, and apparently it's the easternmost driveway into the parking lot.
Mhm.
And during the parking activities for the farmers market, that drive will be closed. And I guess really it won't be, there will be no use, but I don't know how right now the participants in the farmer market use that east side parking lot if that drive is closed. But
There's some yeah, they do some parking there, but
So are you saying that one will go there or both?
no, one will go there and one will go on the Grand Street right next to the cleaners.
Okay, we decided, at one time, weren't we looking at having one at like Winston Park or something?
Well, that's still in the queue with the state. That's going to be a fast charger, much like the Tesla station is up on the north end of town. And we're working with Shell and also with, of course, West Side to get that in there. That'll be when it comes. That'll be a sizably more contribution on the part of the city, but it'll actually be owned by Shell.
Okay.
The address in the report is 231 Michigan Avenue. Is that the cleaner's address?
That's right next to, it's in that parking lot there. The parking lot, I don't believe has an address, but it's right next to that, yes.
Okay.
And what we're gonna do with those parking spaces, the majority of them will be labeled as joint use. So they're just not, just not taking up a lot of parking spaces, and people think they can't park there unless they have an electric vehicle or charging. But yet we also want to have spots left so people can use the chargers. And it's because this will, with the West Side Solutions, this will be on the United States map as a charging point for electric vehicles.
hey Ed, do you know? I know like Tesla charges people if they stay connected to their chargers after they've finished charging the vehicle. Do you know if ChargePoint does the same thing? Do they encourage people to not like just leave their car there?
Yeah, we're going to have to, and that's one thing, we haven't developed the rates on this thing yet, and I think it's going to be by the hours connected rather than the energy used, or at least it'll be a match of both those.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Ed this evening regarding the electric vehicle charging stations?
One more. When will this be done, the project?
Well, as soon as the contract is signed by the city clerk, we'll ship it back to Lansing, and then they have to sign the contract and approve it. And we don't want to start early because there's a penalty clause in there. If we start early, then we won't get reimbursed for those charges against the project. So we would expect it really would be done by the end of this year.
Thank you.
Ed, the repairs or anything that have to be done to it, if there is anything that goes wrong, is that on us or is that on the company?
Yeah, there's a 5-year warranty on the items. Now, it depends what the repairs are. It's really, we've got like, kind of like an insurance on them for 5 years.
Okay. And will it generate like revenue for us to like plan for the future for that too, or is it
That's
not
the
gonna be much
intent.
at all?
When we establish the rates, that's the intent is to,
Okay.
yeah, it's just not a, just not a, break even situation for the city. We do want to earn a little revenue on it.
Okay.
And really it's for, after 5 years, sometime these things are going to wear out. We really need to be putting money into a fund for a replacement rather than have to just kick it down the road. Then somebody got to spend another $5,000 or $10,000 on a replacement unit.
All right, thank you. So any other questions?
I'll make a motion that we approve the grant agreement between the city and Eagle as recommended.
Support.
We have a motion and support. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Metzger,
Yes.
Member Traver,
Yes.
Member Underhill,
Yes.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member McNeil.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. And thank you, Ed, for, continuing to follow up on that. I know it's something that we've had on our list and are excited about. And certainly with this grant, it makes it a lot more feasible. So I appreciate your time and Cheryl's time in putting all this together. So next on the agenda, we have item 13B, the Michigan hard cap exemption.
And Eric, if you can put Tracy on, Tracy will lead you through this. We've done this for several years now. So Tracy.
The Michigan hard cap exemption is part of Public Act 152 from 2011, and it just sets a limit as to how much a public employer is allowed to pay for health insurance for each employee. The hard cap amounts since 2011 have gone up 2% or less each year, whereas our health insurance rates are going up 4% or more each year. So we were able to stay under the hard cap up until last year. And that's when we first came to you and asked you to exempt our local unit from the hard cap. It's just the rates are getting so low compared to the rates we have to pay for health insurance. We can't stay below the hard cap unless we do drastic changes to our coverage.
Is this the coverage for the upcoming year?
Yes. It would
Did we-
start July.
Okay. Did we do a search of a lot of companies?
We did a search of different Blue Cross plans. We've had no luck with other companies willing to take the city when we've done searches in the past. We did not do a full search this year. But the rates were in the past when we've done it, the rates are always comparable to what we have with Blue Cross.
What is the reason, do you think, they weren't willing to take the city?
We have 60 plus retirees and a lot of new, like Aetna and that, they don't want to take on that many retirees.
All right, any other questions for Tracy regarding?
I just have one comment. I know what's happened in past years. I just feel that every year everyone deserves a chance to have an opportunity to bid on the city of Marshall and the coverage, as with everything else we do. So we don't necessarily know who would be the lowest if we don't even provide the opportunity, or that no one wants to take us on this year.
Nick, are you? So what's the process? When does the bidding have to take place for the fiscal year? I'm sure that's probably already been done, Tracy, at this point, or is?
It would be really difficult to do it for this year. We get the rates the end of February, and then we have to have open enrollment starting June 1st. So we'd have to check with other companies between February and, have things in place by mid-May.
All right, well, moving forward, I think we should certainly consider all of our options, and would hope that we could do that next year. I'm not sure that there's an option for us to do any more at this point, so close to the deadline. All right, any other comments? All right, hearing none, I would seek a motion to recommend to approve the resolution to exempt the city of Marshall from the requirements of PA 152 of 2011.
So moved.
Support.
A motion by Travers, support by Gates. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Underhill,
Yes.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member McNeil,
Yes.
Member Metzger,
Yes.
Member Traver.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That moves us on to item 13C, trash, brush, and leaf collection millage ballot language resolution.
This is the third time this will be going to the voters. There's two changes in this proposal to be on the August ballot. Is one, instead of going every 4 years, what you have in front of you is 8 years. Again, if you want to go back to 4 years, you have that right tonight to make the change in the ballot language. The other thing that we have subsidized the half mil has not been enough really to cover the additional costs over 8 years now. And so we are asking to go to 0.75 mils. So if you had a $100,000 house, you would be paying a half mil or $25 a year. So if you, this would take it up to $37.50. John always correct me if I'm wrong. So it's 3/4 of a mil that we're asking. So that's another new item there. So two choices you have tonight is to go for 8 years and to either leave it at a half mil or to go to 3/4 of a mil. And I'll be willing to answer questions.
So Tom, what is the loss we're taking currently?
I'm sorry.
I see John lit up there. So Eric, can you turn John on? Did you hear Nick's question?
Yes, I thought she said John, but she might have said Tom.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
Can you repeat the question, please, Nick?
I was just asking, what is the loss we have been taking over the past couple of years?
Anywhere from 10 to 15, 16, $18,000.
Okay, so, and if we increase this to 0.75, what does that bring additional a year, do you estimate, for all residents?
For a $100,000 house, it would be $37.50 a year.
Right.
From 25, so $12 more a year.
Right, but what is that for? What's the total collected amount that you would receive in addition to what we already received?
Hold on, please.
Well, John's also looking, our expenses have gone up, and also when we left the county site, when we were forced to move back, we've had extra costs there also. So this would be paying for some of the compost center, where basically all these materials go, and as well as the Republic's trash pickup that's coming up here in a month. So John, go ahead.
For the budget that's getting presented tonight, we're estimating revenue collections of 97,000 in taxes. And with this millage, it would be 146,000.
which is far exceeding the 18,000 you need, right?
Well, what we haven't done is, we know that the large trash pickup is gonna go up. It's gonna go up every year unless something changes. So it may not cover, or we may have a slight excess this year or next year, but going forward, it's just, you know, I would say averaged over 8 years, we'll break even.
One thing that the council can do every year when they adopt the budget is they do not have to leverage the full 3/4 of a mil. So if there is a surplus, because those are kept in a separate fund, you could decide a year from now, or actually this starts a year from now, is that of what you want to levy accordingly. So you have the right, it's up to 3/4 of a mil. So you have that flexibility when you do the budget. The budget you're looking at tonight, this is not in there. Would be in the budget you're looking at a year from now, because the monies would not come in until next year. Am I correct, John?
Right, they'll start coming in August of 2021, which is our fiscal year 2022.
Tom, do you have concerns going from 4 years to 8 years that this increase won't quite cover what we're doing? Would we be better off doing the increased amount, but only at the 4-year mark in case it goes above and beyond what we're expecting it to?
It is always a risk. No one can tell what, you know, we've going through right now. I mean, if you were to, I guess, it'd give you flexibility. But again, like I said, these are two things that are flexible, the time and the amount. So if you wanted to do 4 years and do the 3/4 mil, and then make that decision 4 years from now, we just, instead of going back to the voters, it was overwhelmingly passed. I can't remember the percentage. Tricia remembers that, but it was 6. Thanks. I see that head nodding there. I think it was close to 70%. It was well received. People enjoy those 2 pickups or 3 pickups that we do. But again, that is your option tonight. And you know, whatever you do will be worked into the budget in the future.
Can I add one thing too, Tom, is I believe leaf pickup in the fall is going to become more and more expensive because our leaf loaders are shot, and we're going to have to develop a different way of doing leaves.
And it will be more expensive than those leaf loaders we've been blessed with that we keep cobbling together.
That was going to be my question. The leaf pickup and that machinery, 8 years from now, I don't see us using that same stuff. So I don't know what that will look like as far as expense of new equipment or new process or whatever that looks like. So 8 years is a little concerning.
Yeah, I think that equipment we have, we'll be lucky if we can use that through the full leaf pickup this fall that's coming up. It's great equipment. They don't make them, so we have to cobble everything together and custom make if there's a repair. So,
Anyone else have any feelings on the 4 years versus the 8 years?
I guess the 8 years. Okay, so if our equipment doesn't make it through the fall, have we already started researching costs for new equipment? So is that factored into this millage and the money that would be captured for like a year from now to use towards new equipment?
I don't want to speak for Marguerite. Eric, if you can turn Marguerite on video, and then if she has anything to maybe add with her short term here. Marguerite, your audio's on.
Hello. So right now our plan is we actually have in the CIP for 21 fiscal year, bear with me, fiscal year 21, a loader and clam bucket that is the start of switching over to a new technique for the leaf pickup. So that is the plan in conjunction with the existing equipment. So that those funds are paid for through the CIP. How they're generated, John would have to help how we've pulled those together over the last several years. But that is the plan right now.
So just to add to that real quick is Motor Pool would actually purchase the equipment, and there'd be a larger or higher charge to the Leaf and Brush fund for the use of that equipment.
I'm looking up for the cost of those two pieces of equipment. If
The
bear with me.
the clam bucket is 15,000. The loader is, I don't remember. Sorry.
The loader is 177, 235, and there's two clam buckets at 15,000 for a total of 30.
So we have two loaders now. One loader now. The one clam we were planning to have, we would have a backup piece of equipment. One loader, the new loader is replacing a 2011, no, much, we have a 2012 loader that I believe we're keeping. Sorry, I'm getting it right. And we're replacing a loader that's just past its useful life. So we'll have two loaders to use for the fall leaf cleanup this year.
So just to circle back, because the way the budget happens, the way the Motor Pool buys these, then this millage would not. I mean, it would cover the Motor Pool expense, like the leaf pickup expense to the Motor Pool, but it wouldn't actually cover the purchase of the equipment. Is that, am I hearing that right?
That is correct. That equipment, except for the clam buckets, are used for other purposes, snow, everything else. So there would be the hourly charge there for those. And the question will be is just, can the mechanic piece together enough to get through another season? He does a miraculous job with basically making Model Ts do something that we need to have. You know, it's something, we have a very tight time frame to get that accomplished between leaf fall and snow. And so it's the other piece of equipment. So initially, you know, if we were to do a half mill, I believe the leaf pickup will cost more. And we are hearing that the solid waste pickup may cost us more. Marguerite, I don't know, have you heard the numbers yet from purchasing?
No, I haven't heard what we're going to be at there.
So do we have any projections on the cost increases? I mean, do we even just estimations of whether or not this millage will cover or this 3/4 of a mill will cover the expenses 8 years from now?
No, I don't think we can figure that out. So to answer maybe the question that was asked by one of you earlier is, or asked of me, is I think if you were to go to 3/4 of a mil, we know a half mil will not pay for the cost. If you went to 3/4 of a mil and did it for 4 years, you could at least see, was it too much or was it too little? Because we're going into a totally different method of picking leaves up. And we're not sure of what that cost really is. So we're unfortunately going in blindly, because until you have a season under your belt that you can know that what's the cost. So if my recommendation, if you felt comfortable with 8 years, which I could see why, the 3/4 of a mil, at least it's up to 3/4 of a mil. And if you find that you can do it for less, then you can levy less.
And Tom, that was actually going to be my question. In the language that's proposed, it doesn't really articulate that. It says that it's a set mill, right? Can we adjust that language? And I would be in favor of the actually 4 years. I just think there's too many unknowns right now. It doesn't feel right to commit ourselves to an 8-year structure when we don't even know what the actual costs are going to be through this next change.
So I can't see all of you now because I've got the report up in front of me. It currently says, shall the city marshal levy 0.75 mils for 8 years, understanding this would now change to 4. I think you could say, and Tricia or whoever has done millage should request more often than we ever have, shall the city of Marshall levy up to, adding the words up to 0.75 mils. One of the procedures happens is once you adopt this, Tricia, you send it over to the county clerk for approval, the ballot language.
Yes.
And this language, well, we have to submit the first submittal here next week.
The sooner the better in case they suggest changes.
Okay. So we could insert that language. I see our city attorney's on the in the meeting here. I don't know if he has anything he would add if he's done any millages like this, but I would think adding the word up to and see what the county says.
I had a question. So just to clarify the process, so if we were to do the 8 years, it sounds like we have a mechanism where we can levy less than that in a given year if we choose to do so. But if in 4 years we wanted to go back and just ask for a higher millage rate for the same thing, would it be possible to go back with that 8-year millage in effect and just essentially ask for that original language to be replaced, or would we be stuck with that? How does that work?
Whatever you would have, if you did 8 years, whatever language you would have, there is probably some mechanism to give up a millage. But I'm not sure. I mean, this is the only millage we levy, and I've been fortunate in my past, I haven't had to levy millages. So this is new territory. We've just done it 2 other times. This will be our 3rd time.
Okay.
All right.
I know none of you like levying millage or increasing millage, but again, we're just bringing you the facts. It's gotten more expensive over the 8 years.
Any other questions for Tom?
One quick
Would it
one,
be
if I
more
may.
cost of,
Actually, sorry, Nick, if I
That's
may, this might actually be a question for Marguerite. I'm just curious are we anticipating the new process will be more labor intensive or neutral or less? Do we have a feeling for that yet?
I don't know, to be honest. I'm trying to recall some conversations I've had with Phil Smith, the DPW superintendent. I think it'll be cleaner. But as far as less labor, I can't say.
I will add one thing is the current machines actually chop the leaves. So when they're blowing them in the truck, you're getting compacted leaves. While with a clam, you're going to have full-size leaves. So there will definitely be more trucking costs. I'm not sure if it's, one for every 4 trucks the other way, but it will actually, because you're just taking loose leaves versus chewed up and blown and compacted. When it comes out as a bulk. So your equipment, and if you're putting more trucks out, you're going to put more labor. Now the street labor, I'm not sure if it's going to change much because they're still going to have to get it into the street like they do now. I think it's going to be more expensive to do.
Tom, have we ever investigated subcontracting this service?
Actually, yes, we did. And I'm going to ask Eric to come on because this was one of the discussions when we were talking about the solid waste going consolidated single vendor. This was part of the proposal. And Eric, I do not remember the results. So you talked to most of the vendors.
Yeah, we had it was a different method of pickup. If you recall, that would have been going more to the 95 gallons containers for that. We were going to kick around the idea of approaching a private company, local companies potentially to take on that service. But we stopped moving forward on that issue after the December hearing at that point, wanting to refocus. So it's not an apples to apples service, Nick, that we explored, but we have talked about exploring other options. We just haven't run with it yet.
It's a very labor intensive, equipment intensive, to cover, 40 miles of streets. And, fortunately we're a tree city, we have trees, and I don't know what you would do with them. Some cities bag, as we talked about, but I know some of us would have quite a few bags when we're all done.
So did we totally give up on that thought?
We decided that if we're going to look at consolidated waste, we'd look at the trash and recycle first, and then look at yard waste and bulk pickups and stuff like that. That was a couple months ago when we talked with council on that.
So the other question is, if a later council or if at a later time we decided to pursue that again, is it possible to repeal this millage in the middle of the term, whether it be 4-year or 8-year? I mean, I guess we could just decide not to levy it, but
Exactly. That's what you'd do, Jacob, is you would not levy it.
okay.
You'd have the capability, but you would not levy it. As an example, if you decided to get rid of transit, you have a millage, you just would not levy that transit millage if you ever got rid of transit.
Okay.
All right, any further discussion or questions? All right, so the recommendation is to adopt the resolution for the August 4, 2020 ballot language for the renewal of the trash, brush, and leaf collection millage, amending the date from 8 years to 4, and the language to include up to the 0.75 mils.
So move.
Support.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Do a roll call vote, please.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member McNeil,
Yes.
Member Metzger,
Yes.
Member Traver,
Yes.
Member Underhill.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That moves us to item 13D, the large-scale street improvement program.
Marguerite's going to take over here, and there's a slide presentation that Eric will switch to. So Marguerite, you're up.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council. We, as you may remember, we reviewed last meeting. We talked about a potential program for improving our streets. Eric, next slide, please. We did an assessment early in February and found that we needed to repair several miles of city streets. The attached graphic is updated and improved to show the various types of funding that we are looking at for different streets within the city. We have a pretty decent geographical spread of repairs, and we want to develop a 2 to 3 year plan to accomplish these repairs while also doing our standard annual maintenance on all the other streets that we need to do. Next slide, please. So between last council meeting and preparing for this council meeting, we have gotten some more information and really started to see the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Prior to that, you know, what we reviewed last time was that we wanted to fund improvements to the roads through a bond sale and pay for the bond through a 1 mil increase in levied property taxes. We would use our typical Act 51 funds for preventative maintenance tasks and annual, you know, some of the repairs, but also continue with our annual maintenance as we do in today's state. Since then, it's become more apparent that we will face a reduction in Act 51 funding. The amount is unknown. So I'll repeat that. The amount is unknown. I put this graphic together just to show what a 10% reduction looks like. This seems to be a popular number right now as far as an overall annual decrease for the remainder of this year and for fiscal year 21. So whereas we were planning on close to $950,000 in Act 51 funds, we are now looking at $850,000 for fiscal year 21. Again, due to COVID-19, the exact effects of this are unknown, but this is where we're at today. Next slide, please. So now that we know more uncertainty, now that there is more uncertainty, we have changed our plans slightly. The changes being that we propose halting on the bond issue for now. We would continue to develop a comprehensive plan for road improvements. And we are still asking council to approve an increase in levy mills. With uncertainty in funding and a delay in the bond sale, we will have a larger amount of patchwork that we need to do this year to keep some of the roads going. And the increase in levy mill, the increase in mills will allow for us to make up some of the shortfall in our potential reduction in funds. Currently, we still plan to do projects. Okay, so we still have Eagle Paving and Jefferson Paving. Those are part of a water main project. We have East Drive and North Drive paving and Mansion Paving. That's all part of a MDOT grant program. And then Birch is also scheduled on the fiscal year 2021 plans for paving. Currently, the overall scope of things is shown in that graph there on the right, showing that we plan, those are the different funding types, with the dollar amount being the scale to the left, and the miles by those repaired by those fund types to the right. We know that 1 mil will not cover $3.5 million in repairs. So there's some decisions and some further investigation to be made there. Likely there's some more intense maintenance that can be done to extend the life of roads and take them off the repaving list. And then there's just priorities to be made at that point. But all the other fund types there is what we have. We will continue to work on the grant options. There's another grant option that we were just talking about late last week that we could apply for. So we will, that would be part of the comprehensive plan. That covers that. At this time, I would take questions and open to any comments.
Well, of course, I have questions.
Sure.
The 1 mil would generate how much income, A, and what would it do to a person's property tax bill, B? And for those of you that are going to extend your future with the city council, this would not be a lucrative move with the voters, because it just wouldn't. We hate to see them increase taxes any further.
Good point. So 1 mil results in approximately $195,000 annually in revenue. For someone who owned a $100,000 home, this would be a $50 increase per year.
I don't see ballot language with this. Does this millage not require a ballot approval?
Right, so this would be part of the budget resolution for the next meeting. It does not, well, Tom can help me out here. I do not believe it requires ballot language because we are under the 18 point something mills that you can levy, and with this additional increase, it would be under, it would be 17. I don't remember those numbers. I'll have to pull them up here. 1 second.
Marguerite is correct. It would not need to go to a vote. I mean, that is another option that you have, is you can go similar to what Emmett Township did or Fredonia Township, and you could actually go to the voters and request a millage. Albion, Battle Creek, all have road millages. And I know Emmett Township, I can't remember what they passed. They're doing about 75 miles of their roads in Emmett Township through a voter approved millage.
This mill would bring us up to 18.1 mills. We're currently at 17.1, and the max mills possible is 18.4.
Not sure if Nick had asked the question. 1 mil gives us 195,000. I'm not sure if,
yeah,
if that was mentioned.
Okay. Yes. Anybody want to weigh in?
The language I'm not quite clear on was this, are you proposing this is just for fiscal year 2021, or is it projected that we would continue that?
At this time, it would be for 1 year. Potentially, as we develop, not potentially, but as we develop this plan, we would ask for the millage to be levied for as many years as we need to pay for the bond.
So how many miles of paving does 195,000 get us?
That's the grand question.
10 feet.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'll answer it this way. We're at 10 miles right now for $3.5 million. Okay. So if we levied for 1 mil, we need to be more at $2.4 million to afford the bond with a 1 mil increase. That would be, call it 7 miles for 2.4.
Roughly.
So
I think roughly a 1 mil would cover about a half a mile. Maybe 2/3 of a mile, somewhere in there. So without doing something major in the way of funding, because we used to use general fund monies to help out on street paving. Over the years, that money has gone to other departments, and there's no general fund subsidies going over to streets.
Is that something that we could look at? As I think about it, $195,000 is not a huge amount in the context of a nearly $40 million budget. But I think, as Nick is pointing out, from the perspective of our constituents, it's it's a lot to them. It's going to feel like a lot to them. And I'm just wondering how exhaustively we've looked at, finding those savings somewhere else. I mean, I'm sure we're constantly looking for savings, but yeah, I guess that would be my thought.
Well, it's the money you would have to, because public safety is 50% of your budget. That's where majority of your money go to. And if you were to take anything from general fund, that's the one area that you would have to. And I know that is well, most of you have told me that is not an area you want to tap into. So it doesn't give a whole lot of money available. And but this last winter has not been good to the streets. And so we were looking at how can we make a major impact on those streets.
But if it only covers just a short bit of road, that's not a major impact.
Well, selling the bond is what would. I mean, if you were to do a 15-year, 20-year bond using the 1 mil, you'd be able to do get the money now and then pay back your debt with the millage.
But that millage would have to be more than a year then. Right?
Oh, no, correct. It would be, as Marguerite said, once you decided to sell a bond, then you'd be committing future millages. This 1 year would be just the start of putting some money into the streets. And then if you decided to go long-term, large-scale project and sell a $2.5–3 million bond, then you could make the impact on basically that map that Marguerite had.
Unfortunately, the roads are always going to continue to deteriorate and get worse and worse. And the map that we've seen with the deteriorating roads now, it's just going to look worse in 6 months and worse after next winter. I don't see any other options than to levy this mill. I've yet to ever hear of what else can be done. There's only so much you can cut, and it's only a Band-Aid. This is a long-term problem. It will always be a problem.
Do you feel like we know enough yet? I mean, if the assumption is 10%, but it actually ends up being 15 or 20, if we've already acted in this capacity, do we have any other options to go forward?
Well, that's why Marguerite suggested a pause. I think is the word she used, is let's see what's going to happen with Act 51 monies. Let's not go out and say we're going to do this program this summer and fall and sell a bond, and then all of a sudden our revenues are bigger. Is look at seeing when the economy turns back, what happens to that. So we're not recommending tonight or next week for you to approve a bond sale. We're just, if we're going to levy 1 mil, that has to be part of your budget resolution at your next meeting. You can't levy mid-year. So if you do it, you'd have to do it for this coming budget, or you'd have to wait a year.
So if we wound up not moving forward with the bond, what would happen to this money? Would it be levied, or would it not be levied until the bond was sold?
Well, I think what we're asking is that this 1 mil be used for start getting some of the streets together. So we would use it, the 1 mil, for street improvements, to do a half mile or 2/3 of a mile, whatever it may be.
When would that revenue be brought into the city if we went ahead tonight with this?
John, that would be August, right?
August of 2020 for fiscal year 2021. It will be general fund operating, and it will be then transferred over to streets. But it is a general fund operating millage.
So it'd be on the summer bill.
Correct.
Okay.
What are your thoughts, Tom, if we let the voters decide this?
These are strange times. I mean, I would say a year ago, I think you'd have the support. And I think you have all lived in this community, brought up in this community. It's a very giving community in all ways. What people have given through this COVID, what's given to our foundations. It is very questionable right now, the impact that it's had on all of you and our citizens and our taxpayers. I think a year ago, I would have said, I think it will pass. You look at what the schools have gotten passed over the years. The city really has not, except for this half mil leaf millage, has never gone and asked for additional millage. Well, going back 30 years to Dial Ride and to recreation. I don't know. I think if you heard a lot of comments when we were talking solid waste, don't fool around with solid waste, but let's get our roads. And there was one gentleman, and I apologize to the mayor, I could not come up with his name, has been at your meetings over time, and he saw me in the hall a month or two ago, and he says, why don't we just levy a mill and start fixing our streets? And I said, well, that may be coming. And he comes with his wife. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but that was just one individual.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's one individual. I would say let the people just decide.
Well, let me ask this then: is and I'm very much let the people decide. If you know me, I wanted, when we did the police and fire, to put it to a vote, and at that point, a few that were on council then said, no, we need to do it. So you just levied the millage at that point to cover police and fire buildings. If you want this on the November ballot, Tricia, I don't know if you know the date for language for the November ballot. I'd have to dig in a few emails here. That do you remember what that is?
Not off the top of my head, but I can find it.
And surely everybody should weigh in on this. I mean, this is my opinion personally. So
it's going to cost us all.
I've just been around a long time, and I know that it is going to cause
Mhm.
some major conversations with people.
You know, for my house, it's going to cost me about $100 a year, 1 mil. And I'm probably overvaluing my house a little bit here.
Well, I think others need to weigh in on what they feel is appropriate.
We brought it up during our last youngish chat and explained exactly what's going on and how we're going to approach it. And everyone was in favor. There's about 15 people on the call, 10 people on the call that were in favor of it. No, if they actually knew what was going on with it, going into it was just like showing them the numbers. They need an explanation of why we're doing it. But if we can kind of show the public that of why we're doing it and what it's going to be doing, I think in the long run it's better for the city and everyone else if they just understand it.
Hey, John, do we have any other mills that we have levied that are either for bond sales or anything that are coming where they'll be coming off the tax bill in the near future?
No, none of our millages are for bonds.
Sorry?
None of our millages are for bonds.
Okay.
The only one,
I will say this, though. I'm paying, I want to say $228 in Penfield for our street project for 15 years. I don't know how many mills that is. It's probably 3.5 mills. Well worth it. If anybody hasn't been out to Penfield, they need to go out to Penfield.
But aren't the property taxes less in Penfield?
No, but we had to raise $4.9 million, and the county paid the other half, or their percent.
Right. But we're paying our tax bills, and people will attest that's the number one conversation is that they're extremely high in Marshall proper.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I tend to agree with Nick on this one, that I would rather see that go to a vote on the ballot. Especially given the times that we're in right now, it may seem like a small increase, but emotionally, I think it feel like a kick in the teeth to people. I mean, I think people will be on board. I mean, people definitely want to see the roads fixed, but right now, where people are going through so much uncertainty, so much hardship, you know, to then, you know, have the perception that we, you know, without consulting them, went ahead and did this. You know, even if we think it's important that it's done, I think it's important that the citizens get a chance to debate it, discuss it amongst themselves, and then, you know, come to an agreement that yes, obviously we value the roads, it's important, and have that buy-in, especially right now with everything going on.
My concern is we take it to a vote and it gets turned down, and then what do we do?
No.
Right, because if we take it to a vote and it gets turned down, we can't just leverage the flexibility we've got in our total general fund millage threshold and just bump it up without their consent after the fact. So we're committing ourselves to one way or the other. Can somebody remind me? So, Marguerite, I hear you that we've got capacity in our general fund millage. We're at 17.16 now, and we can go up to, I think you said 18.4. That is through a previous vote by the public. Is that right?
John, you need to.
I believe it. I'm sorry. I believe that's charter.
And what
Started out at 20 mils, and through the Headley rollbacks and everything else, we're down to 18.4.
Okay.
Tricia, I think you found a date for us.
Ballot language for the November elections due by August 11th.
So you have until August 11th if you want to put this on the ballot in November.
But it wouldn't help you with your 2021 budget.
No, correct. Unless you were to tell us that you want to put the millage in there, which could be a negative, because some people will say, you already did it. You know,
Right.
now you're coming. So what I think I would recommend to you is that you would not add extra money into the 21 budget.
Right.
That would be my recommendation, is because if you're asking the people their opinion, let them give their opinion. And I've seen it done the other way, and it doesn't set well.
So I think something else that I'm thinking of is if it goes to vote and it passes, citizens are going to want to see impact. So we have to think about, is the 1 mil that we are asking for approval enough impact? Does it work, right? We can do some more work certainly to tell you exactly what we would do with that 1 mil over 3 years, but that's, I guess, maybe a concern I have, is just making sure that we're balancing the expectations with what we can do.
One of the things that we can come back is we've got until August, is looking and coming back and saying, okay, to do everything you see on that map, it's 1.2 mils, 1.5 mils, just looking at that. And but we can revisit some of those streets and see, but so that would give us some time, because it's just something you got to do right the first time, because you usually don't get a second chance. I think, Ryan, you're going to say something. I
was just going to echo what Marguerite said about meeting people's expectations. I'm on the side of the fence right now that we need to do this now. But even by doing that, we're still not going to meet people's expectations of what work would be done with that money, whether they're in favor or not in favor of the mill. I think it's always going to be an uphill battle, even with levying this full mill, because say we were able to fix 70% of the roads. Like I said earlier, it's just going to be worse next year. There's going to be a new set of roads coming on, so it's always playing catch up. That's all I was going to say.
One of the things I didn't mention, we've been blessed or cursed in the last 3-4 years that we received grants from the state to rebuild our 2 bridges. But we had to pay for all the engineering, design, construction costs. So that took a big chunk away from our streets. Those bridges, absolutely needed to be replaced, and but it took it away from street paving, and it went into those bridges. So that was one of the things, if I can say a little negative, that occurred to us.
Which we have another bridge still to do, and that we asked for a grant for 23. So those bridges are up over $100,000 just in engineering costs.
So we'll take whatever guidance the majority of you. I mean, I think your options is to put it on the ballot in November, having us come back with a little more information. Option 2 would be to levy the millage this year, and then again take it to the voters, or you could, so just whatever guidance we have. I mean, it's I don't think there's it's going to affect our pocketbooks. I mean, there's no way around it somehow.
I tend to agree. I mean, if we're going to go to the voters, I think we ought to go to the voters with a complete solution. If we, to kind of, meal around and not solve the problem, I think would be a bad idea. If we need to approve this tonight and move forward, I would support it, but I can't see supporting this and then going to the voters. Like you said, I think that would be a really bad idea. But if we're going to go to the voters, I want to go to the voters with a full picture.
All right, so it's sounding like option 1 seems to be the most favorable. What action would we need to take tonight, Tom?
No action tonight. John will prepare the budget without this extra mill, which I don't think is in there. John, you please correct me.
It is not in there.
All right, so you don't have to take any action tonight. The budget you've seen earlier, or you will be seeing, will be, won't have to change anything there. We will just come back with a complete solution. And I think that's a great phrase to use with this, of getting our roads back to where they were. We're just hitting a 25-year. We did so much back in '95 that they're 25 years is most road times you plan for 20 years on asphalt pavements. Most of these are now at 25 years that we're redoing because of the water main project we did in 1995. So I've got good direction. I think staff has good direction. And so there won't need to be any action if that's, again, what the majority of the council wants to do. We work for you.
All right, any other comments?
What is option 1? What page is that on?
Well, there is none.
Oh.
What it would be.
What was option 1?
Option 1 is to come back with a complete solution for a recommendation to put it on the November ballot. And it may be, like I said, it will, I can almost say it's going to be more than 1 mill to do it, the complete solution. And we'll bring that to you as soon as we can so that you can talk. And then prior to August 11th, we would actually have it narrowed down what the language would be to give to the voters. That money would not come in. And John, something on the November ballot would not come in until August of 21, correct?
Correct. So it'll be fiscal year 2022.
But what can be done is a bond could be sold on the premise that you have the millage coming. So you could actually start work in the spring, which we'd recommend you get better prices. So if it passes in November, we would sell a bond, early winter for construction to start early in the spring of 21. And it may be over 2 years. That's something we'll have to look at.
So are we just waiting to hear back from you on what that would look like, and we could still have the option to vote in a coming meeting or two whether or not we want to levy this mill now?
No, we're down to the deadline. John, I mean, we need to pass that budget resolution by.
I'm looking here at the charter. It says not later than the first meeting of the council in June, the council shall by resolution adopt the budgets and the appropriations and set the millage rates.
So you have until the first meeting in June, which is June 1st, to put the mill in or leave it out. And I hate to turn to Marguerite on this one because I know she's trying to get a water main project out right now. We can come closer to a complete solution and tell you that, okay, if we were to levy by vote, it'd be 1.5 mils, or we can refine some of those numbers that we have.
Are we voting on this option 1?
Not at this time. Well, I don't know. That's up to you and the mayor if you want to give us direction by vote or by consensus.
I still feel like we should do this now. So if we're going to have a move forward with a direction, I'd like to know where the majority of the council sits.
So do I.
Could I ask one more question to Marguerite before we move forward? Is that okay? Marguerite, I wasn't totally clear from that presentation. Which are the roads that are going to be done in 2020?
In 2020, Eagle and Jefferson will be done.
So those two, okay.
There's 5 blocks total.
And part of Mansion because of a grant from the state, is that correct or no?
That's not funded through the state until 21, the spring of 21.
That'll be 21. Okay.
And that will be Mansion from Madison to East Drive, and North Drive back to Madison.
We would have engineering costs associated with that project because there's several steps and things you have to go through for the grant. But actual work would be 21.
Okay. Great.
What's our share of that project? 300?
I'm not sure that number, John.
370,000. It's 700 some thousand total, and we get 415 from the state.
Right.
But that's funded.
That project will cost us, just to make it simple, $380,000. And if we levied 1 mil this year and 1 mil next year, that would cover it and free up extra money for patching, milling, repairing. We know we have to spend that money to get the grant.
Correct.
That sure muddied the waters, didn't it?
Leave it to finance.
So we'll take whatever direction you want to give us.
So Ryan, what did you have in mind for a motion?
That we move ahead and approve an additional 1 mil for roads effective now.
Do you want to have a vote on the original recommendation then, I think?
And Tom, your thought was that if we were to do that now, if we were to go out for the big picture project, it would probably look unfavorable, saying that since we already moved forward with that.
My opinion, I'm an engineer first, manager second, maybe, just my background is, I think if you were to levy the millage and then go to the voters, I don't think the public would like that. If you're going to levy the millage and you're willing to do it without a vote of the people and then sell the bond and then you dedicate that millage for the future, I guess if you want two options I'll give you the two options. Option Ryan's motion or Ryan's suggestion, and then we levy that millage into the future by selling a bond. Or the second option is not doing the millage in the resolution for the budget and letting the voters vote in November. I think those are your two choices.
So the first one, they would,
go ahead.
Sorry. The first one, they don't have a choice. They'll scream now and continue on. And the second one, they can have a choice at the ballot or at the voting polls, right?
But it will probably be more expensive.
And we don't have the funds available for this fiscal year.
You would just miss out on 1 year.
Assuming it passed.
Assuming it passed, you'd miss out on 1 year. But 1 mil isn't going to do everything we need. We're going to have to scale back that map if we were to do a 15 or 20 year bond. But if we're going to come back with a total picture, a complete solution, it's going to cost a little more than $1 million to the voters.
Yeah, your complete solution at that point looks okay. Here's what we're resurfacing. Here's what we're reconstructing. And then you'd have a whole maintenance plan on top of that, where it would be like the useful life of this road is now this, and we would do XYZ to it in 4 years to extend it another 10 years. I mean, there's a lot of data and thought that could go into that, but agreeing with Tom, it would be over the 1 mil.
Have we got any of our millage currently, any at all that go to roads?
No,
Nothing.
nothing. Which is very, very unusual for a city.
Mhm.
Where the heck is all our money going?
Well, and
And-
I do think that's the other piece of this, John and Tom, is understanding our total millage for a typical resident in comparison to other municipalities, because we all know that sort of directionally Marshall is high, and that's part of the reason a lot of people choose to live here is because of the services that we get associated with that. We've got good school systems, we've got generally good roads, we've got a good police department. But I don't think we've had a really good conversation about where we fall in terms of other municipalities in the city for the total mills levied and what that's getting for us. I do think hiding some of this stuff, my real challenge with this is sort of hiding this in under the city general fund millage isn't being terribly transparent with our public. I would rather we come back with a clearer message around what it costs to upkeep the roads, knowing that that millage rate is probably going to be higher and it's actually going to cost our taxpayers more, but they get more ownership of that investment. Just like the leaf pickup, they see that as a separate millage line item. They feel very passionate about it. They're willing to advocate for it. I think if we give them transparency to how much it actually costs to maintain the roads, I actually think they'd be willing to go for that, even at a higher rate.
One thing that's always hard in our community, looking at our other three cities in the county, I can tell you Albion and Battle Creek both have property tax, income tax, and a road millage. Battle Creek's the same way as Albion. Springfield has an income tax. So when someone says my property taxes are higher, well, let's put it all together. And we did something, and I can't remember when it was, that really showed that our when you're all done, because you have to make an assumption on the value of the house and the income that you get,
Right.
Income, because your income tax. So you have to put that together. And it actually turned out that we were cheaper to live here in Marshall than it was in Battle Creek or Albion.
Yeah, I hear you. Unfortunately, nobody thinks like that unless
I
we're
know.
very clear about the total cost to live in a municipality, all taxes included. Unless you see that the state of Michigan publishes really regularly, here's every municipality and how much millage they levy. And so you see Marshall way up at the top.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't, none of that data is an aggregation of here's the actual total cost per municipality to live there. So we just have to be better. And I think part of the way we can be better without an income tax is to be much more transparent about what those millages are being leveraged for. And for me, that means if we go back to the public in November with a specific road millage, even if it's more than the 1 mil, I think we'll get better support and better trust from our community and probably less anxiety that they pay a tax and they don't really know what's happening with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in favor of waiting until November. John, we're going to have to figure out, if there's gaps in our street budget for this year because we don't have that extra 195,000 that we were sort of talking about tonight. We're going to have to, I think, all get creative and try to figure out a way to help you with that, making tough decisions and communicating that out to our constituents, and then put it on the ballot in November.
To your point, Mike, I have a recollection of a graph I was shown early on one of the city meetings, one of my first city meetings, that I'm pretty sure our total property tax picture, about half of that is the schools. Is that accurate?
It's more than, well, yeah, it is about half, isn't it? Okay, John's leaving.
Which Which does bring up a bigger point, or I guess a secondary question is, does anybody have knowledge if the school has any bond issues coming up that they're planning on bringing forward? Are we going to be competing with anything on the November ballot like that?
I think the answer is yes. And anybody jump in here that knows, I know there's a committee looking at facilities. They wanted to go either May or August to the ballot, but the committee, I know Matt Davis sits on that committee, and my daughter-in-law and a few others. It was a very large what to do with all the buildings and, you know, that are now in the system. Possible replacement of an elementary in Albion. So, but they decided to hold off because they felt they weren't ready to go for May. I haven't heard anything else, and maybe somebody else closer to the school system might know.
There's discussion about, along with facilities, athletic facilities coming on after the performance center is off. So I think that's another 2 or 3 years.
And Scott, I think the total is, it's about a quarter of the total millage is school related.
Okay. That wasn't my recollection of the pie graph I saw, but okay.
Yep.
So we await your guidance.
All right, so we could move forward if someone would like to make the motion that's on the agenda and vote if we'd like to go that route.
I like what I hear about the full, what can't remember what you called it, full
Complete
program
plan. That's where we're going to trademark that.
Yeah, I like that. I'm still really concerned that it gets turned down, and then we can't go get this mill, and that's my biggest concern. I mean, I'm a gambling man, but I don't know if I want to take that gamble.
Well, I think, Ryan, I would say, and I have the easy pass because I'm done in December, so I don't have a lot of repercussions from this. But I would encourage anyone who's staying on, look, if it gets turned down, because I would assume it's going to be higher than a mill for the total package that goes to the public. I think it's fair, and we're all called if we have to, if it goes to vote, it gets turned down. We still have the discretion to implement the mill and say to the public, look, we hear you. You didn't want the full package. You didn't want the 2 mil package. We still have roads to fix. We've got discretion in our general fund. We didn't want to, or in our general millage, we didn't want to do this, but we have to fix the roads. So up 1 mil.
And we would not be able to do as much. You're correct, Michael. Right.
But I think I don't like the idea of thinking, though, that if we go to the public and they say, no, we're not passing this millage, if it's a 2 mil increase for the total package, I still think we've got, I believe, unless somebody corrects me on this call from city staff, we still have the discretion to go up the full mill as part of our general millage.
Correct. You have that discretion. If the voters don't want to levy the big program, you have the right to levy that. Yes.
So is it not possible to wait until the next meeting and find out what the full solution would be? You're saying we have to make a decision tonight. We could not wait until next meeting with more information.
I guess I'll turn to Marguerite. Do you think in 2 weeks, I know you've got a really bad week this week getting the water main out, can we refine and show the total solution? Do you think we can refine those numbers to where we can then say with John, okay, 1 mil will collect $195,000 to say exactly if it's 1.5 mils, 1 mil, 2 mils? Do you think we can pull that off?
Don't, to be honest. That plan And what I'm envisioning is has a lot of information that we'd have to pull from outside, just the internal, but then pull together. So I think we're looking at that would take several months.
Ed, did you want to say something?
Yeah. Get on mute, Ed.
There.
Okay.
All right. And this is just my observation of listening to the conversation tonight. It sounds like streets is a very important topic for the council. And, I've done some projections on the electric revenues, and I think the electric, we're going to have a little bit of in this fiscal year, a little bit of a problem. But I think it's going to turn around significantly. I've redone the revenues that'll be coming in based on the new projections from MPM and others. And I think there's going to be some available cash that we could transfer the general fund to help the streets out. And even to the point, I hate to transfer 5%, but it could be 3%. But 3% of $1 million is, I think we could get $1 million or $100,000 or $150,000 in the next fiscal year out of the electric fund to help the streets. Sorry, Tom, I kind of sprung that on you, but I'm thinking here, and the streets are, from where I've driven, they're in need. It's just going to get more expensive the longer we let them go.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah, okay.
I appreciate your generosity. So,
Yeah. Well, it's not, it's just the money that is in the electric fund that maybe put to better use.
again, we don't need any action tonight. The only thing, if next week when you adopt the resolution, you can always suggest an amendment next week. If you all, because I think you all have good intentions. It's just how to do it.
I think it's been pretty obvious where I sit, or I've been sitting all night, but what Michael's last statement, I think, kind of pushed me to the other side. If knowing that the council will look different then, or will it? Will it? What? I don't know.
In January, it looks different.
Yeah, so you'll still be on. So
Yeah.
as long as you guys are there to say that you would levy that 1 mil if it gets turned down
Right.
by the voters before you're off, all right, then I can support option 1.
Yep.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, Mayor and Council, is you wanted us to prepare a program to present to the voters in November on a large-scale street improvement. We'll come up with some good marketing, which I'm not good at, but we'll come up with a good terminology. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep.
Yes.
That's right.
I'm seeing heads, yes.
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 Okay, thank you for giving us some time. That actually, by August, we can really put together a good program and see what it's going to cost.
All
Okay.
right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
So next, we're going to move on to item 13E, schedule a public hearing for the fiscal year 2021 budget. So the recommendation is to schedule a public hearing for Monday, May 18th, 2020 to receive public comment on the fiscal year 2021 general fund, special revenue funds, enterprise funds, and internal service funds budget.
And before you make that motion, Council, I'd like John maybe to give you a little update on a couple things that we've been working with. John, if you would.
Yes. I think the council knows that both of our deficit elimination plans for fiber and electric were denied at this point. So we are still working with Treasury They asked to submit a Plan B. The Plan B was no marijuana revenues, and the fiber fund would be flat revenues. We submitted that. It's under review, and we're hoping to have a Zoom meeting with the representative we've been working with, either late this week or early next week. So the budget that I presented to you, besides fiber and electric, is the one I want to present to you, and I want consideration for adoption. But I just need you to know that fiber and electric may be changed slightly to reflect our Plan B that we submitted to Treasury.
We don't support the Plan B. It's something he asked for, you know, what if you had no growth in FiberNet? What if you had no marijuana electrical sales? And we know it's totally wrong. And now he came back and said, well, okay, I want you to adopt it. In fact, the Treasury is telling you 7, that's good English, that you are to adopt what he wants, which I think is wrong. And I know my staff has never seen me angry. And I was really upset when I'm hearing that somebody in Lansing who does not know our community, does not know our growth of FiberNet and the success that we've had, and the what we're seeing from the marijuana industry, forcing us and telling us what you should adopt for your community. And so we're going to do a call, but I just wanted you to know we may be forced by Treasury to adopt something that is not true. So I wanted John to at least share that and not get emotional. So
Not true or overly sort of pessimistic.
Overly pessimistic.
Okay.
Yeah, they're looking at absolutely no growth. We know we're going to put on no, additional FiberNet customers. We know additional grow rooms are going to come online. So it's lower revenues and much lower expenditures. And once, one way or the other, we see the marijuana revenues, and of course we can spend that money appropriately. Same with FiberNet.
So we're hoping in the next 2 weeks that we can work with the Treasury person to show him how we're figuring it out and negotiate or come up with a better solution. So we've spent a lot of time trying to work, and we think an in-person phone call is going to be the best way to handle it. That's all I have, Mayor.
I'd be happy to answer any questions. I will say that if anybody has not been able to review the budget, page 42 is the city manager's budget message, very important. Page 45 has the capital projects that we're approving or asking for adoption for. And page 51 is the actual budget resolution that is required by the Budgeting Act. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I know we spoke in our last council meeting about submitting questions anonymously. And then, were you going to share those?
Well, I did was it my report or in my weekly, I did share the comments, the questions that I had received as of last Friday.
And one of us, me, didn't have others in.
And that was only, I replied that only back to you, Nick. I did not share that with all council. I can do that tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Or we can share them now if you'd like.
That doesn't matter.
Okay.
All right, any further questions for John regarding the public hearing for the 2021 budget?
Mayor, if I could add one more thing real quick. We know that this budget will change. I don't think drastically, but it will change. And I don't think chasing our tails as far as the cuts in revenue sharing, the cuts in Act 51 money, possibly cuts elsewhere. Once we know the impact of those revenue reductions, we as a director team plan on looking at this budget either bi-weekly or monthly, and we're going to know what we're doing sooner than later. So I just want to assure council that we know that there's a lot of work ahead of us.
Thank you, John. I understand that, you know, with these times, that's just exactly what we're going to have to do. Continue to monitor it and make adjustments as needed. So any further questions? Hearing none, I would seek a recommendation to schedule the public hearing for Monday, May 18th for the fiscal year 2021 budget.
So moved.
Support.
Support.
Motion by McNeil, supported by Wolfersberger. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member McNeil,
Yes.
Member Metzger.
Yeah.
Member Traver,
Yes.
Member Underhill,
Yes.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That moves us to public comment on non-agenda items. Anyone wishing to speak this evening may do so. Please raise your hand in the Zoom app and you will be allowed to speak for up to 5 minutes. Just state your name and address for the record. Any hands up, Eric?
No, we have two attendees, Kathy Miller and Paul Davis. I don't see either or one of them having their hand up right now.
All right, seeing no hands up, we will move on to council and manager communications. Member Wolfersberger.
Good evening. I will speak to the, I'm sure Jacob has some things to add as well, but the farmers market will be firing back up this Saturday. And I can attest to the preparations that are going into it and the concerns that are being addressed. The vendors will all be wearing masks and gloves. They will restrict entrance to one side of the lot and exit to the other. There will not be allowing dogs for the first few weeks. So it's, you know, I ask everyone to bear with, and yeah, that was timely, wasn't it? I ask everyone to bear with the volunteers and obviously the market manager. This is, you know, they're inventing a new process here, and I'd really like to, I'm really hopeful there's a lot of cooperation and you know, people are in good spirits, but I'm, you know, obviously there's a lot of tension right now too. So please pray for them.
All right, thank you. Member Metzger.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Member Gates.
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Underhill.
Nothing.
Thank you. Member Traver.
Just a thank you to Nick for the beautiful sunset with the palm trees in the background.
Anytime.
Thanks. That's all.
Thank you. Member McNeil.
Just thank you to Cheryl Vosberg for all the work that she did on the electric vehicle charging stations. That's really helpful to the city.
Absolutely. Thank you. Let's see. Any of the director team would have any further comments?
If I may, a few of us sit on the EOC meeting. It is now down to once a day. I'm not sure if this is an anomaly this week, but we are seeing a true flattening. We're up to 239 cases, and we're up to 15 deaths in the county. Current statistics for our zip code, not for the city, for our zip code is we have somewhere between 1 and 15 cases. I don't have anything more on that, but There's been only 1 or 2 new cases over the weekend. We'll get a new count tomorrow morning, but we may be seeing the flattening. The west side of Michigan, as you've been hearing on the news, Kalamazoo almost doubled their cases over the weekend. They're getting hit hard. Kent County and Ottawa County, Holland area. So I hope we've seen the flattening, but once I think things open up, I hate to say it, we may see the cases go up. So just, be safe when you're out there and stay healthy. And is the information I give you on a weekly basis, is that sufficient? Or if there's something else you might need, just drop me an email. But I start putting those graphs in to maybe show that so-called curve that's out there.
Thank you.
That's it.
Tom, could you just update us on how the brush pickup is going this week and hydrant flushing?
Hydrant flushing is progressing. I haven't heard of any problems. Brush pickup started up today. They were up in my neighborhood, and that was the first time ever, I think, that we've been near the beginning, but they're moving along. What they're doing is a 3-man crew. They're first coming through, get the big piles with the loader and 2 trucks, and then they're finishing their day going back through that neighborhood with a chipper, getting the small piles. So they may leave something, but they'll be back later that afternoon to get it completely cleaned up. So it's probably going to be, Marguerite, did, I see a friend there.
Hi, Duke.
I thought I was done.
Hi, Duke. Is it any other updates on brush pickup?
No, it started today. You're right, with a 3-man crew. And then the new completion date for hydrant flushing is next Wednesday. Right now, we had some delays last week. So they are in the northeast section of town right now.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else, Tom?
That'll be all.
All right. Clerk Nelson, anything this evening?
No, thank you.
All right. I want to thank everyone for your time this evening. It was a good meeting, and I will call it adjourned. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.